Welcome to Black Sheep, the series where I will take a look at entries in video game franchises that were poorly received or controversial among the fans. Now, I won't be dwelling on the negative aspects of these games. Instead, I'll be looking in detail at the things I like about the games, whether it was the story, gameplay, music, or anything else it contained, and see if they are really deserving of the infamy that they have. For this episode, we will be looking at Sonic the Hedgehog, 2006. Sonic the Hedgehog is one of the all-time classic video game franchises. The incredibly fast blue hedgehog made his debut on the Sega Genesis in 1991, and he has been speeding through levels ever since. Sonic has had numerous games over the years, both in 2D and 3D, and in 2006 he made his jump to the then next-gen systems, the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. In celebration of the character's 15th anniversary, Sega and Sonic Team simply titled the game Sonic the Hedgehog, which can be a bit confusing as it shares the same title with the original Sonic game. So from here on out, I'll refer to it as Sonic 06, as it is called by the fans. To be honest, I'm still not entirely sure why this game received the title of Sonic the Hedgehog. It's definitely not a reboot of the series, and outside of the real-world visuals, it isn't a reimagining either. Indeed, Sonic 06 is Sonic Adventure 3 in all but name, as it shares many of the same gameplay systems from the previous Sonic Adventure game. Anyways, the most substantial part of Sonic 06 is the story mode. Sonic 06's story is by far the most complex across the entire series, as it involves time travel, extra-dimensional beings, and fighting destiny. Now, some people may scoff that a Sonic game should have a story to begin with, but I have rather enjoyed the stories across all the different Sonic games, including Sonic 06. While Sonic 06's plot may seem ludicrous, it is filled with some cool and fun moments. The story is told from the perspective of Sonic the Hedgehog, Silver the Hedgehog, and Shadow the Hedgehog. All three storylines happen simultaneously and interweave with each other. Sonic's story revolves around rescuing Princess Elise, the current monarch of the kingdom of Soliana. Dr. Eggman, aka Robotnik, kidnaps her in order to unlock the secrets of the Flames of Disaster. Through her and the Chaos Emeralds, he can achieve his goal of ruling time itself. So it's up to Sonic, along with his pals Tails and Knuckles, to rescue Elise and try to put a stop to Eggman's schemes. Some were put off by the friendship Sonic has with Elise, thinking it odd that a blue hedgehog and a young human girl shared so much time with each other. Ultimately, though, Sonic is just there to help Elise until he's defeated Eggman, and he'll move on to his next adventure. But Elise is important to him, and he helps her become a stronger person.
Nothing starts until you take action. If you have time to worry, then run!
Sonic's story is the simplest, as it has him mainly rescuing Elise, then she gets captured again, and then he has to rescue her again, etc. That being said, I found it pretty cool, and there are some good character moments for Sonic.
Don't be late. Same to you.
Silver the Hedgehog, the game's new character, comes from the future. He lives in a world that has been devastated by Iblis, a fiery behemoth that cannot truly be defeated. The telekinetic Hedgehog and his friend Blaze the Cat are offered a chance to go back in time and change the past by a mysterious figure known as Mephiles. Mephiles tells the two that Sonic is the Iblis Trigger, the one responsible for releasing Iblis's flames. With determination to save the future, Silver travels back to the past to kill Sonic. Along the way, Silver meets up with Amy Rose, Sonic's self-proclaimed girlfriend.
It's about time I finally caught you again. Hey, you're not Sonic! I'm sorry.
Silver eventually learns the truth, and discovers that it is in fact Princess Elise who is the vessel for Iblis, making her the actual Iblis Trigger.
That's a good girl, Elise. Remember, be brave. Don't cry, no matter what happens. Otherwise, your tears will call forth the flames inside you. Become a strong queen who doesn't cry, no matter what happens.
With this new knowledge, Silver teams up with Sonic and finds the means to properly seal Iblis. For the final bit of his story, Silver goes back to his own time to once more confront Iblis.
This time I'll finally stop you!
Upon defeating him, Blaze summons Iblis to her, and she becomes the new vessel, sealing herself in another dimension. Shadow the Hedgehog story has him trying to stop the true antagonist of the game, Mephiles. After completing a retrieval mission with Rouge the Bat, Shadow accidentally breaks a relic that contains Mephiles. Resurrected through Shadow's, Shadow, Mephiles is hell-bent on joining with Iblis in order to return to their true form, Solaris. Shadow, along with Rouge and E123 Omega, must rebuild the relic to once again seal Mephiles, and stop him before his ambitions are realized. Shadow's story might be the most engaging of the bunch, as he has to deal with what is arguably the most evil villain in the Sonic series.
The world will betray you. Why fight at all? Why risk your life for those who will persecute you later?
If the world chooses to become my enemy, I will fight like I always have.
After you have completed all 3 storylines, the final story opens. Mephiles is now powerful enough that he decides to take things into his own hands and actually kill Sonic. Consumed with despair, Elise begins crying, breaking the seal and freeing Iblis.
Iblis! Now, Chaos Emerald. It's time for the final curtain call.
Through the Chaos Emeralds, Iblis and Mephiles join together and once more become Solaris, an extra-dimensional being that controls time and lusts for destruction. All of the game's characters find themselves in a space-time rift and discover Sonic's body.
Due to Mephiles' manipulation.
Sonic? No. You don't think...
Sonic!
Thankfully, it turns out Sonic is only mostly dead, and through Elise's power and the 7 Chaos Emeralds, Sonic can be revived. After completing the game's final stage, we come to the game's most infamous scene, where Elise revives Sonic by kissing him. And to be perfectly honest, I still don't find this moment that bad. This scene always had an almost fairy tale-like feel to me, where one character revives the other with a kiss.
Now it's my time to return the favor. I care not what happens to me, but please heed my voice. Sonic, come back. To me. To us.
Thank you, Elise.
He then transfers power to Silver and Shadow so they can defeat Solaris in the past, present, and future all at once. After finishing the game's final boss, Sonic and Elise are taken to the moment of Solaris' inception. By puffing him out of existence, the flames of disaster will never be released. But it also means that none of the events of the story will take place. With support from Sonic, Elise blows out the flame of Solaris, resetting the timeline. So as you can see, the story of Sonic 06 was pretty crazy, but overall I enjoyed it. And for those who don't really like it, well, you can take comfort in knowing that the events of the game never truly happen. Now on to the actual gameplay. Much like the story, the game of Sonic 06 is divided into 3 different types of gameplay. Sonic plays similar to his 3D adventures in the Sonic Adventure games, although he's a bit tougher to control this time around. Speedy platforming is the main focus here, and in 2 of the game stages, Sonic is carrying Elise and gains access to a special energy aura. In several of Sonic's levels, you finish the stage with a super speed section, where Sonic runs crazy fast. Unfortunately, Sonic is quite difficult to control here, which can result in a quick death if you aren't careful. Despite some of the control issues and game hiccups, Sonic stages can be fun once you get a feel for them. They may not reach the same heights as some of the other stages in the series, but levels like Crisis City and Kingdom Valley have some pretty fun sections in them. Shadow plays similar to Sonic, but he has a more expansive move list and can ride vehicles in certain sections. By defeating enemies, Shadow can unlock the Chaos Boost, which allows him to perform powerful attacks like the Chaos Snap and Chaos Blast, although its area of effect is significantly smaller this time around. The vehicles aren't quite as easy to use, but most of them are optional, and most of the time you'll be traversing the vast levels on foot. Silver plays the most different out of the 3 Hedgehogs. What he lacks in speed, he makes up for with his telekinetic powers. By picking up objects in the environment with telekinesis, Silver can defeat his foes by throwing objects at them. It's a pretty nifty game mechanic, and it can be fun to pummel enemies with loads of boxes. Silver can also levitate for short periods of time, and manipulate the environment with his powers. Silver's gameplay can be fun, and in general his levels are enjoyable, except for the ball puzzle on Dusty Desert. That can be a bit rough. In addition to the 3 main characters, you can also play as the supporting characters like Tails and Blaze. Some of the characters are pretty fun to play, but again, control issues can sometimes hamper the gameplay. Knuckles and Rouge suffer the worst of this, as they tend to get stuck to walls while climbing them. There's a great variety of gameplay across the game's 3 episodes, and that's not even including the Soliana adventure fields and town missions. Although your enjoyment of all this will be greatly affected by whether or not you can grasp the game's mechanics. Sonic 06 is a very buggy game, and combined with some of the control issues, you experience some cheap deaths and other not so great stuff. On the other hand, when the game is working properly, I find it can be quite fun. Not long after you begin playing, the most obvious flaw of the game is the overabundance of loading screens. There's a loading screen for pretty much everything in this game. It breaks the momentum in the game's stages, and it can be a bit troublesome during town missions, where you will have 4 loading screens for each mission you take, regardless of whether you succeed or fail. Loading times have never bothered me all that much, but for someone who can't stand them, I can easily see why this would quickly get frustrating. Even if you don't like the story or gameplay, there is one thing almost everyone agrees on, and that is the soundtrack. Music has always been one of the strongest parts of the Sonic games, and Sonic 06 holds true to form. The music in this game is spectacular, and fits each of the game's stages perfectly. The boss battle music is incredible as well, one of which is one of my favorite pieces of music from the entire Sonic series. Sonic 06 also contains some songs, which have been part of the series since Sonic's CD. Some of these tunes are better than others, and my favorite one of the bunch is Silver's theme, Dreams of an Absolution. If you haven't already listened to it, I'd recommend checking out Sonic 06's soundtrack. it's got some fantastic pieces in it. So to conclude, does Sonic 06 deserve its less than stellar reputation? It's a game that has a great many flaws. It contains numerous loading times, sloppy controls, and some crazy bugs. And yet, despite all that, every time I've played it, I have had fun. It's definitely not one of the best games in the series, but at the same time, I don't believe it's this unplayable garbage game that it's been made out to be. I can easily see how aspects of it would turn people off, and as I've stated before, there are parts of the game that I struggle with as well. Sonic 06 is one of the many video games that was released well before it was ready, and maybe if it had more development time, it could have been a great game instead of just an okay one. There are parts of this game that I love, and parts that I'm not so fond of, but this game was definitely a turning point for the franchise. The reception of this game was quite negative, and this made Sega and Sonic Team push for more quality games in the future. And several years later, we received some excellent games like Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations. And I'm hopeful that we'll see more great adventures with Sonic the Hedgehog in the future. Thank you for watching this episode of Black Sheep. What are your thoughts on Sonic 06? Feel free to share in the comments below. Also, if you have any ideas for future Black Sheep games, feel free to share those as well. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to leave a like. Until next time, keep having great adventures, everyone.